part of the goal.
Hey man, you gonna let him talk to you like that?
No man, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him in real life. I'm gonna kill him.
Yo!
That do not trigger.
Dude, let's fucking parkour. Holy shit, yeah.
To defend.
Oh shit, don't. You're gonna die. Don't do it. Dude, Crowley, no. Bad Crowley.
I started out
Crowley, don't.
I wanna
idea. Consider both sides. No, I
can't do it.
People want to think we're in the most violent times. We look at violence against trans.
Dude, Dinky, be careful.
First, there was always violence against trans people. No one was talking about it.
He's in this corner on the
There was
left.
violence against other people. There was violence against black people. There was violence against women. There's a whole list of
What the
people
fuck did you just say to me?
were more represented statistically in the world than trans people, where we went through periods of our social justice to try to rectify those
Hey, I'm
problems.
coming, motherfuckers. You're gonna get shot,
so-
pussies.
The fact that trans rights
Let's
are
just
on the
fucking
table
go. Come on, let's do it. Come on, let's go. Come on.
is itself a measure of
Hey,
progress.
hey, hey, no, Potter, Pooter, whatever your name is, come
Because
back.
we're not talking about
okay, whatever. Fuck.
gay marriage.
Fucking.
We're not talking under President Clinton.
Fucking idiot.
Liberal presidents. Do you know what the thing was? It was gays in the military. Don't ask, don't tell. That
Wait,
was
what?
considered a progressive stance in the 1990s.
Wait, it wasn't
under a
that
liberal
B?
president.
Huh?
Don't ask, don't tell.
Wait.
Now in Qatar,
Okay.
they say
Well, dude, I'm high as shit right now. And also, I'd like to say I'm at the top of the leaderboard, and I am seriously intoxicated. So fuck you.
For that regressive posture. It's exactly what we were 30 years ago. Don't ask, don't tell. I don't mind if you're gay, just don't kiss another man in front of me. You're a man. Otherwise, okay with it. All right? So what I'm saying is, look at the other things that preceded it, and you can declare progress having led up to it. That's my point. Not that it's still, it's not working, and it still needs solutions. And you still have to somehow change people's sense of what equality is, and equal access, and opportunity, and equity, and inclusion. That all still needs to happen. But that is not happening now, or less so with black people. So there are measures of progress that are kind of perverse, but real. And you know what my father used to say? He said, I'll know we've achieved
fuck you.
equality.
Hey.
Hey man,
Hey, fuck you, dude. How about you get toasted, dude? How about that? Huh? You sound good with some fucking mayonnaise, some lettuce, fucking tomato,
You're so funny, dude. I'm laughing so hard right now. You really got me with that one. You really got me with that one.
Dude,
Like I said,
shut
it's a
up.
perverse measure.
What the fuck?
But it's another way to think about the progress that has actually happened in this world.
Fucking assholes,
All I'm
man.
saying, we may be living
Hey man.
in some of the safest times there ever was in the history of civilization. I don't think we should lose sight of that. People are afraid to say it, I think, because the worry, and it's a legitimate worry, that you might just get complacent and sit back and say, see, everything is fine. It requires no more work and no more effort. I'm saying maybe we should pay, in addition to worrying about the violence that persists to this day, we should look at the successes and say, well, what did we do right? Let's do more of that. And there's not much of people saying, look how far we've come. Let's list how we achieved this.
Why don't people do that? Why don't they? I saw a poll on Twitter 2 days ago, and the question was, it was essentially, do you feel optimistic about the future? I clicked yes, and I was in the tiny minority, 78, roughly 70%.
Y'all know where they at?
I think it's slightly more. Felt pessimistic about the future. Either were worried and fearful about the future.
Right, and here's another statistic, which is in the spirit of that, which is a little more thorough. it was a Gallup poll, one of the, I forgot which one, it might have been a different one, but one of the official polling agencies, for the past 30 years, have asked people each year in the United States, are things more dangerous for you just in your community and in your this year than last year? 27 of those years, people said it's more dangerous this year than last year. I don't feel as safe as I did last year. Okay? Now, let's plot the crime rate over the past 30 years. It has been a precipitous drop. Just dropped. There's some bumps in there, but basically, it has dropped for 30 years. Since basically the 1980s, 90s up until today. So there's some delusional force operating on people's understanding of the world in which
Nobody's
they live.
coming over our right flank. They're coming
And
from
then
behind.
people wanted to blame it, I think, correctly, on local news. What's the first thing you see? You put on, not the national, the local news. There's a crime committed, and now we have video. So, you know, we didn't used to have surveillance video. Now you see the person beating up on the old person, the person breaking into the jewelry. Now you see it. You say, oh my gosh. You know, clutch your loved ones and your valuables. Our ability to show you violence is greater than ever before. And it affects us emotionally. Part of what it is to be a scientist is to figure out all the ways you could bias yourself and remove them as far as possible, as much as you can. What is the scientific method? If not, I give my own wording of the scientific method. It's simply do whatever it takes to not fool yourself into thinking something is true that is not, or that something is not true that is. So that poll would have told me, I'm going to look at the actual data. And I'm going to look at and I'm going to react to the actual data, not to my feelings about an objective truth. Nothing wrong with feelings. It's the source of the greatest art in the world, and it's our emotions, how we feel for people. But if you're going to make legislation, if you're going to act on your feelings, and there's an objective truth that informs those feelings, that's the path you should take. Otherwise, we're a house of cards that could collapse at any moment because somebody feels like you're gonna harm them, or they feel like it's dangerous, or they feel like you're. No, excuse me? I love human feelings, but don't let it interfere with objective truths. Don't let it interfere with legislation, laws that would have to affect us all.
Quick one from our longest standing sponsor, George. I can't tell you over the last, really it's been about 2.5 years, it's really post-pandemic, how much my health has become such a huge priority in my life. Huel has been probably the most important partner in my health journey because I've been in the boardroom.
They're pushing our right.
Tens of times. I've seen how they make their decisions on nutrition, and that's why it's such a wonderful thing to be able to talk to this audience about a brand and a product that is so unbelievably linked to my values and the place I am in my life of valuing the gym, exercise, movement, my mind, my breathing, and all of those things, and most importantly, my nutrition. That is the role Huel plays, and so every time I get to read these ads out, I do it with such passion because I really, really believe every word I'm saying, and I absolutely love it. So if you haven't already tried Huel and you've been resistant to my pestering, then give it a go and let me know how you get on. We're lucky enough to have Intel sponsoring this podcast, and Intel Evo is essentially their badge of excellence that determines whether so it's going to save you a load of time researching and comparing models, because if you see the Intel Evo badge, you know it's passed Intel's own strict requirements for laptops that prioritize on-the-go productivity. One of those requirements for Intel Evo is the real-world battery life and fast charging when you're in a rush. Intel Evo laptops have long-lasting fast-charging batteries, which ticks a lot of boxes for me. You'll get at least 4 hours worth of charge.
I got flash, hold up.
And a battery life designed to last at least 9 or more hours, even if your laptop have multiple tabs open. The laptop is also really responsive. With the Intel Evo platform, it wakes up in less than a second and comes with 12th generation Intel Core processors built into the laptop, so it's ready to go instantly. As someone who spends a lot of my time out and about between podcast recordings, talks, meetings, business meetings, events, etc., etc. Being able to rely on a laptop to keep going at the pace I do is critical. And with the Intel Evo platform, you get the performance and the battery life you need to do just that. Head to intel.co.uk to find out more about the Intel Evo platform.
Your documentary, Cosmos. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Cosmos. I think it's might be an English.
You're a Brit. I don't know or care how you pronounce anything.
It's our language. So
You can say-
Cosmos. Okay.
You will never find an American correcting British pronunciation.
Well, it happens
because
sometimes.
we just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So objective truth and reality and feelings. One of the things I learned from that documentary, which was honestly, I remember the day I found it. I shouldn't say this, but I didn't have a lot of money, so I found it on some like dodgy, like pirated website, and I watched. I think it was 8 episodes.
Security.
Yeah, I watched them all that night, and then I went back and watched the previous one with Carl Sagan. It just captivated me, and it has ever since. I actually would cite that as the start of my fascination with the universe. And one of the really profound things I took from it, when we're talking about objective truth and feelings, is there's a scene in the documentary where you kind of like zoom out, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going and going. And it made me, talking about objective truth and feelings, it made me feel so insignificant. I realized that I am objectively irrelevant. And that was a wonderful feeling. Because with that, it strips away the burden of your own self-importance and ego. Do we matter?
So the cosmic perspective is incompatible with your ego.
Okay.
I should say your ego is incompatible with the cosmic perspective. That's the proper way to order that sentence. The cosmic perspective shows you how small we are in size, in time, in space. And if you go in with a high ego, you might resist that. You might say, no, I'm important. But I think of it differently. We know one of the greatest gifts of modern astrophysics to civilization, dare I call it a gift, is the knowledge that the atoms of your body are traceable not only to the Big Bang origin of the universe itself, but especially to stars that have manufactured those elements and later in their lives, on death, exploded, scattering that enrichment across gas clouds so that their next generation of stars would have planets. And on at least one of those planets, life. So, we are not just figurative, we are literal stardust. So when you go out and look up at the night sky, yeah, your urge is, I'm small and that's large. And yes, you're alive in this universe, but there's another way to look at it. The universe is alive within you. You have kinship with the cosmos. That feeling, to me, is greater than any ego you could have possibly walked into the room. First, that feeling borders on spiritual. Second. Third, we have trained ourselves to equate being special with being different. You're special. You do something, think some way that no one else does. So I'm special. Well, let me turn that on its head and say, maybe we're special, not because we're different, but because we're the same. All humans share a chemistry with all biology, with all other life on Earth. There's one Genesis on this Earth. We have DNA in common with a banana. You can ask, well, where are the arms and legs? No, DNA goes deeper than that. DNA controls chemistry. It controls metabolism. It controls all kinds of things that are prescribed in the DNA, and that's where we have commonality with other life forms on Earth. So why not look around and say, I'm not special because I'm different. I'm special because I'm the same as you, as others, as the tree, as the brook, as the animals, you know, the woodland creatures. And we can all sit here and look up at the night sky and say, yes, we have kinship with the cosmos. I feel large because of that, not small.
You mentioned the pursuit of happiness earlier when you were talking about one of the central sort of like doctrines of the American dream, that pursuit of happiness. And in what you just said about the universe, I was pondering when we from. So I'll kind of ask the question at the same time. This happiness and meaning, where does that come from in your perspective?
What I have found is an urge people have to search for meaning.
I'm planting the bomb.
Is it under this rock? Metaphorically, right? Is it under a rock? I'm going to search on. Is there meaning there? Is it behind a tree? Is if I join this group, will I find meaning with them? And I think to myself, okay, go ahead. But what you're doing is relegating meaning in your life to a search. If you don't find meaning, that'd be a force of disappointment. You're setting yourself up to be disappointed if you don't find meaning. So I have another idea. I use this for myself. I may or may not work for others. I recognized long ago that in a free society where I'm not enslaved and I'm not, an indentured servant, that I have some freedom of choice, that I have the power to manufacture meaning. Decisions about my own life that create the meaning. For me, a meaningful life is learning something new tomorrow that I didn't know yesterday. Otherwise, it's a wasted day. You know the prisoner who keeps their X's in the boxes on the wall the day they get out? I have that in my head, and the day that I get out is the day I die. All right? And what these boxes remind you of is every day you're alive, you're one day closer to death. So there's one fewer days in there to accomplish something that you might have wanted to accomplish. So,
You think they're out of money yet?
I want to keep learning about our world, about each other, about things I don't otherwise know about. And there are people who only read things that they agree with, or that they already know about, or that they're feeding some urge to be, to be validated. I have books on my shelf, at my bedside. Every book is a subject that I either know nothing about or I can't going into the book. So maybe it'll change my mind. Learn new ideas. Okay? I once presented that list to the New York Times when they said, because my book was doing well at one point, and they'd try to get authors to talk about other books to keep the book wheel turning, because fewer people are reading today. So what books are you reading? So on your shelves, I listed the books. One of them was a book in its 30th printing or something, written back in the early 60s, I think, maybe even the 50s. A book by Barry Goldwater called The Conscience of the Conservative. And so I'm reading this, and people wrote to me after they saw this list and said, I didn't know you're a closet conservative. I didn't know you're really a Republican. Did you vote for Trump? And all of a sudden, people were presuming that if I'm reading a book on something, that book must be what my whole life is about, rather than it's a portal to another place of how people think and what people do. So that shocked me, actually, because that tells me that most people must have just books that continue to feed their own interests. And that is the best way to not grow in this world. So one of my measures of meaning is how much more do I know about the world tomorrow than I did yesterday? Because almost any path you take you as a person. So I value wisdom that gives meaning, a new perspective. It's not just knowledge. No. What is the arc? There's data. Data can become information. Information of further study becomes knowledge. And after enough time, when you see how the knowledge plugs in and applies, it can become wisdom. Wisdom is the distilled essence of all the wisest statements ever spoken.